So, Malyssa, how are you feeling? Let's just start there and let's let everybody know where you're at today.
I am a 3 out of 10 on the how much of a human am I scale. I have been sick since Thursday and have not slowed down to rest yet, as we'll get into when we talk about our weeks. So I am struggling. I'm pulling myself up by my bootstraps and my bra straps, and I'm trying to keep myself together. But as Kirt can see, I literally could not be bothered to even take my beanie off to record with you. But I did. I physically had to give myself a pep talk to get into the shower.
Okay.
So
That's
we've
nice.
gotten that far, but you can't see it, but I'm literally surrounded by 2 bottles of water. I have a thermos full of hot ginger and lemon, and I'm sitting by 2 Kleenex boxes. So we're doing this.
Yes, we certainly are. I mean, where does one go from there, really? Except like straight into talking about this week, I guess. So, I
mean, it was weird. There was lots of weird days off because of the weather.
Yeah.
For those of us who work regular jobs.
Yeah, people who leave their house to do their jobs. The only thing that was weird about it for me is that John was home for one of those days when he's not usually. So, but other than that, normal week for me.
Lucky.
And like also additional like snow blowing and stuff had to happen earlier in the week. So
fair.
Yeah. But other than that, the cold didn't affect me much.
Hey.
So
it never bothered you anyway.
Right. Yeah. Wow. Speaking of Idina Menzel, Rent Live was a thing that happened since last we had a podcast.
I made it through La Vie Boheme. I want everyone to know I made it through La Vie Boheme. And then Allison Macknick and I were Snapchatting back and forth about it. And after I went to bed, she sent me a Snapchat saying that I didn't miss much, but I had to go back and watch I'll Cover You reprise when the video came out, which I did, and just cried.
Yes.
Because on top of that song already being emotional, it always makes me think about in high school, we did a fundraiser for our drama trip where we had our drama director, Ty Wesley, do like a one-man show, like story night where he just told stories and we sold tickets for $10 each. And he also like sang some of his favorite songs from his repertoire. And one of them is I'll Cover You reprise. And I just remember holding my friend Claire's hand and just crying because he sings that song so well because that man has an amazing voice. And I just associate it on top of already being like an incredibly sad, beautiful, moving song with that lovely memory of that moment in time. So,
yeah.
But otherwise, it was a thing.
I watched it a few days delayed because it's John's favorite musical. And so obviously I would watch it with him, and he's been busy because he's in a show right now. And so we watched it a few days later. And I gotta say, it wasn't as bad as the commentary online led me to believe.
Yeah.
So
it could have been worse.
It way could have been worse, especially considering like having the full knowledge of the fact that like it wasn't live. It was a recorded dress rehearsal, which no matter how exciting it is to have any kind of audience in front of you, none of those people thought that this is what was going to go in front of, millions of viewers watching on Fox. So it's different. It's a different energy. You could also tell that like a lot of their voices were tired. And that's the thing where like when you end up doing the real show, your adrenaline kicks in because you're being watched. And so none of them got to have that experience until the last 10 minutes of an actual live performance where they could like bring their A game because they knew it was the show. Like it was opening night and like opening and closing night for them in that situation. So I have to say, for those of you who have taken our advice to listen to the Pod Save America canon, the Love It or Leave It, one of the rants was about Rent Live. And I just fully endorse what the guests at Love It or Leave It said about that particular thing. So just go listen to that and you'll understand why I still think it was worth doing. And not as bad as everybody thought it was, despite the fact that it had Vanessa Hudgens in it. So I'm using her real name because people who listen to the podcast won't know that I usually refuse to even use her real name, and we replace it with any two words that start with V and H.
You mean vacuum hummus?
Yes. Or VapoRub hippogriff. Anything.
Oh, I would kill for some VapoRub right now. I did take the Dayquil that I bought at Festival Foods, which, to point to the level of sickness I am, literally opened the box and like took it in the aisle, is Dayquil Extra Strength VapoRub brand Dayquil. It tasted disgusting, but I just am desperate to feel and hopefully sound better. So hopefully I don't sound too awful. I'm trying.
No, you can hear in your voice that something's amiss, but it's fine. It's fine.
It's fine.
It's fine. So yeah, other than that, just a weird week, but
very weird.
Sort of uneventful at the same time.
Yeah, and for me until I got to Friday. Because I went to the Marquette-hosted Milwaukee City Hall Student Congressional Debate Tournament, which Amy Geiser always does an amazing job hosting. And it was very cool because Mayor Tom Barrett, Mayor of Milwaukee, did an introduction speech. And then the city clerk, I'm going to look up his name right now. It is Jim something very hard to say, or Zuski maybe? Let me just keep butchering that until I find it in my Facebook. Keep scrolling.
Prime podcast content.
I'm going to say Owzarski, but he is a Marquette Forensics alum who always swears in the students and gives a little like pre-speech that I've talked about before, but it's always lovely and great. And then, just a grand old time at Congress. But then we drove from Congress back to Sheboygan, stopping at Kopp's because I told my kids if they all gave a speech, I would buy them Kopp's custard. Took 2 lactates to treat myself to half of a scoop of chocolate custard. And then I got back to my house at around 10:45-ish. And then I was up again at 4:30 to get on a bus because I went to Sun Prairie yesterday, whereas you were at Winneconne.
Right.
And
you're jumping the boom, boom gun. We're not ready to talk about Saturday yet because you haven't told the story of how your congressional debate trip started.
Oh, but it's embarrassing. Okay, fine.
That's why you have to take it on the podcast.
Oh, okay. So
Remember the last time you had an embarrassing story and we forgot to bring it up?
Yeah, I do.
So it needs to happen this time, despite fine. Your illness.
We rent a van when we go to Congress because I don't drive a vehicle at this point in my life. And the van that the school has on site at South does not become available until at least 2 p.m., if not later. And I wasn't having that. Registration started at 3:15 for the Congress tournament. I wasn't going to wait around for them to release the van to us. Renting a van only cost us $50. So I went. Ben picked me up from work, dropped me off at Enterprise, a 40-minute long process of them trying to get the rental taken care of. I get into the van. I drive the van all the way back to work. I work for another 2 hours. I then drive the van from my place of work to South High. I get 4 blocks away from South High and look into the back of the van to realize that there are no seats. There are no seats in the van. It's just basically a cargo van. And I am on the same block that South High is and then just have to drive past it to go back to Enterprise, walk in and I'm like, hey, I was just here 2 hours ago, rented the Dodge Caravan. There are no seats in it. And she's like, oh yeah, they're all stow and go. So then she has to come out and help me lift up every single one of the seats, one of which got stuck and took both of us to like pull it up out of it. It was a hot mess.
So there were seats there.
They were just all in the ground of the van. They were in the van ground.
In the van ground. And how much, if you had to add up the minutes that you were driving that car,
Oh, I spent a full half hour in that piece before I realized anything was amiss. I was so in my own. I was 1 in my feelings and 2 in my illness. So I was not even concerned until all of a sudden I realized I had to put high schoolers in it. And there were no ding dang seats in that thing. And I felt so stupid. Yeah, I was like, I'll just go get some jump ropes from the PE department and just strap them in. And then I felt like an idiot when I got there. She's like, oh yeah, they're all stow and go. And I was like, how was I supposed to know that? Because first of all, there were still those like little bars. So I thought maybe in the back they would be stow and go, but I thought that are they called pilot's chairs? But I thought that those maybe would be missing. But no, those were also just deeply stow and go because they were like underneath a giant mat that then they were stow and goed under. And so I just felt really stupid. Ground. Yeah, in the ground of the van. It was a moment.
Oh, it's such a good story. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
And for anybody else who rents a vehicle, when you're doing the inspection, an important part of, walking around it and making sure the tires have air and there's no scratches that you're going to get charged for later and that the previous person returned it with gas. Also, check to make sure there's seats.
Somewhere to put the kid.
Sure there's somewhere to sit in the car that you are renting from Enterprise.
It was so dumb.
So a good cautionary tale. Yeah. I enjoyed it. So, okay, now we can talk about Saturday because you and I did, in fact, go to 2 different locations.
Yeah.
You guys got up at the crack of dawn and drove all the way to the Madison area for Sun Prairie, which this is the first time I have not done that in several years because I was not traveling with Sheboygan schools this time around. So how is that? That is always such a long day, but every year we would assess, was it worth it? Did you think it was worth it?
Nothing is worth it to me right now. It was worth it for my kids. They had a good time and we actually were more successful at the tournament than we normally are. 1, because we were medium teams. But 2, I had some kids who did really well. I had a kid go straight ones, both in prelim and in power round, which, as friends people know, is a rare feat. So shout out to Jackson Wolf for going straight ones in poetry yesterday. And it was nice to see the Madison area people. Peschel and Elliot were both there, and also getting to see Rademacher on the circuit. And then the Wapaka contingency was down there. The Appleton East contingency came down. So that was fun. Also, because I had no real judge friends to hang out with. I was just hanging out with my kids between rounds and while waiting for stuff. And I haven't really done that in a while because I'm too busy talking to everyone else. And that was just really nice to get to hang out with them. But I was mostly just so miserable. And I had to judge around in the room of a woman. Her name, maybe I won't call her out, where there were just hundreds of Care Bears, both in boxes and out of boxes, up on top of cabinets, on the floor, on her desk, mounted to the wall. There were just too many Care Bears, and I was just so sick, and my Dayquil had started to wear off, and I only had 1 packet of Dayquil left in my house yesterday morning, so I knew I was going to run out mid-tournament, and that was right when it was, and so my sickness was starting to settle back in, and I just couldn't handle it. It was too much. It was a lot. But overall, it was still a good day.
But it made for a very entertaining Snapchat.
So then how was Winneconne for you?
So Winneconne, which is much closer to me than Madison, I had a good time at Winneconne. I was only there as a judge, so I was judging for Wrightstown. I got to see our northern friends, which is nice. I sat next to the Amherst folks, so I got to kind of chat with just a different group of people than I've been seeing the last few weeks. So that was really, really nice. a shout out specifically to Koki Larson, who I had a chance to chat with, and we were talking about stuff, and she was asking me like how Green Bay is, and then later came back to the conversation and was like, sorry if that was weird. I just know about your life because I listen to the podcast. And I was like, I assumed. I was like, there's really no other way you would have known all of that about me if you didn't. So since she identified herself as a listener, she gets a shout out. Hey, Koki.
Hey.
We missed a shout out last week. And so we need to shout out Ethan Hollenberger, who I saw again this weekend, though briefly, at Winneconne, who we chatted with last week at App East about the podcast. And apparently he likes to listen to our podcast at like 1.5 speed, which I don't recommend, because obviously you want to enjoy the dulcet tones of our voices at normal speed.
Yeah, I also talk way too quickly. So he like played it for us on the speaker of his phone, and it was awful.
Yeah, it was unintelligible.
I hated
it. So yeah, that was, and then like I ended up not even getting a final round. I judged prose, poetry, and Farrago. And then ate some lunch, and then I wasn't used in a final round. So I talked with Megan Hummich from Plymouth for about 30 minutes about how much I hate the booster club at my old school. And because if you get me started on that, I will talk for a while. But then we both realized like, wait, I don't have to be here, so I should leave. And I did. I went home. Which was nice. I used that extra time to get an oil change for my car.
Wow, which, so productive.
Exciting stuff. Life as an adult is just so fun. So fun. So yeah, that was my tournament. I can't comment on how any of the teams there did because I left before awards. So I don't know. As far as like, well, I'm gonna think. Do you know what your best thing you saw this week was?
Yeah.
You have picked it up. Okay, I'm going to let you go, and I'm going to think about mine just a little bit longer.
Okay. I judged all 4 rounds yesterday, but I also, again, was just sick out of my mind. And while I saw lots of great stuff yesterday, the best thing that I saw yesterday was not in a round. My student Juliet has family that lives in the Sun Prairie area, and they came to visit her, and they brought her tiny 7-month-old baby cousin. And so the best thing I saw yesterday was her very cute, very adorable baby 7-year-old cousin with its giant chubby cheeks. And she let me do the thing to its cheeks where you push their cheeks closer to their mouth, and then it makes them, and then it goes all weird. And that was the best thing that I saw. Yep, just like that. That's exactly what I did. You can't see it, but hopefully you can hear me doing it to my face. So the best thing I saw yesterday was a 7-month-old baby.
Okay, well, that's not fair. Because obviously that wins in a contest of high school forensics competitors. I am going to say the best thing I saw yesterday was in competition. And I'm going to give it, I was kind of a toss-up between a prose I saw and a Farrago I saw. I'm going to give it to the Farrago. Because I'm going to give it solely to the performer's ability to speak with such empathy on a really difficult topic. It was one of 2 Farragos out of 4 that dealt with the sexual assault of minors. Which, you know how we love our controversial and sensitive subjects in forensics. And she really, really struck the correct tone with just full of empathy and was able to deliver that in a way that was affecting but appropriate. And, you know, as an adult, sometimes it can be hard to listen to a teenager talking about something like that. And in this case, like, she made me feel it was okay to get lost in the story that was being told, even though the story is so uncomfortable and sad. And then on top of it, she used some Kelly Clarkson lyrics in her Farrago, which I was like, you got me, girl. You got me.
It.
Like,
oh no.
Did you see me walk in that room and add those at the last second? Because if you did, you got me, girl. You got me. But no, and at first I was like, really? I don't know why I still have that bias against lyrics as a form of poetry, but I was like, she used just a little bit and it was used correctly. And it did make the piece better. And there was a little part of my heart that sang when I heard those words. I was like, yay.
Aww.
I was like, you did it. And I don't hate it.
So nice.
I know. So good. So yeah, that was the best thing I saw. But again, there were some other things that I saw that I could have brought up as well. So, but I'll give it to that one. Anything else that we want to talk about as far as the tournaments? Did you get any cheesecake? Is that a thing still? Or now that Elliot is no longer involved, no more cheesecake? None at all. Oh, well, there wasn't cheesecake at our tournament either. So.
Yeah, no cheesecake.
Sad.
I just realized I was shaking my head a lot and not actually replying to your question. Yeah, there was no cheesecake, which is unfortunate, but I understand it's not Elliot's lounge anymore. So
right. Well, the end of an era. I mean, also
Indeed.
like all the tournaments they ran and the great team they built and blah, 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 blah. But
blah, blah, blah,
yeah, no cheesecake. That's what we care about. Yeah. All right. Well, if we don't have anything more to share about the tournament, we are going to jump into the topic of this week. This week, we are discussing another Categlorious category, solo acting.
Dun,
so
dun,
we're talking solo hum and solo serious, and we actually have a special guest who we're going to try to get on the line right now. And we are officially welcoming one Miss Allison Macknick to the podcast. Longtime listener, first-time guest. Welcome, Allie.
Hello.
We're so excited to have you and to talk to you specifically about some solo acting.
My baby.
Before we jump into that, why don't we give some people the background on like who you are and why we wanted to talk to you about this specific set of categories. So, where did you come from? What's your story?
Where did I come from? My mom's name is Betty and my dad's name is Tom. So Kurt and Malyssa were my high school coaches. Specifically, Malyssa was Sheboygan South. Kurt did some work with me when I started doing more DI, like my junior and senior years. And they are just wonderful humans. And I continued on into forensics, into the collegiate level. And now people pay me to act as a professional actor. So life is great.
Yay. So she's got some chops. And you said you had an audition yesterday. How'd that go?
I did. It was long, which is really great that I did forensics because it prepares you for a long day of just sitting around waiting to be seen for like 5 minutes and then more waiting around to be seen for another 5 minutes. It was a lot of dancing. We did original choreography from the musical The Prom on Broadway right now. My Armadillo
cool.
tour. It was really cool. Did 30 seconds of singing, 30 seconds of monologues, and it was a good time. It was long, but it was a good time.
How do they know
professional.
What you can do with only that much time?
It's really frustrating. So, context. It was the Illinois Theater Association professionals. It's just statewide where a bunch of different professional theaters send representatives. They also send some from Michigan and Indiana. You present up to 90 seconds of one song and one monologue of your choice, which is a little frustrating in that there's such a wide gamut of different shows that you can audition for. You really have to pick like what's best for you or find a specific company you want to work with, look up their season, be like, I want to be in this show, sing something according. But also it's just it can be such a crapshoot because you never know what they're looking for. So you just have to pick something you like to do.
That's overwhelming.
It's a lot.
I'm upset just listening to that.
I drank a lot of Chardonnay when I came home.
Good girl.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about forensics. So like you said, you did it in high school. You then also did more forensics when you went to Ripon College. And you're going to be our expert today, specifically on Solo Serious, but we're also talking about Solo Humorous. So I look forward to getting a fellow DIer's thoughts on the other category. But let's define these categories. Wait. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, I don't think you can call me the professional on this, Mr. State Champion. Listen.
I got second place. It was second place.
Remember wrong?
No. I should have been the state champion, but I went overtime.
Oh, you're the state champion of me. So
I went straight to
state champion of our hearts.
Yeah. So, but two of the three judges tracked me down stopped me afterwards and were like, you would have gotten the one, except you went overtime. Which was not my fault, because this was back in the days where CFL and NSDA quals were 10-minute categories, but WFCA was still an 8-minute category. So I was just used to doing my 10-minute cutting. And then you go to state the weekend after, and it was like, oh, shoot.
Wow, that's frustrating.
Yeah. So that's my history. So we just kind of jumped right in. That's my experience with Solo Serious. I did it my senior year in high school and had a very successful year. Although, as we've talked about on the podcast, Solo Serious today is very different than Solo Serious was when I was in high school. It's different than like from my time to your time, Allie. And it's even more different now. So what's your personal experience with the category, Malyssa? And then we'll go back and we'll talk about the definition.
I never did any acting. I ain't no actress, but I have coached successfully a lot of DI. I have had a national finalist in dramatic performance at NCFL qualifiers, Evan Braun. And then after that, I would say that Allison is probably my most successful DI/Solo Serious actor. Just because she was very consistently on the state level. Very, very good. And now she's like a real actress. So like, you're welcome.
I'm nothing without you. You get every credit.
For putting that on the podcast for prosperity.
Yes. And I will slip in that as a coach.
Anyone else.
That's true. I will slip in as a coach. I have also had a state champion in DI, which I was very proud of. So, that's fun as well. Okay, so now let's backtrack. What are the categories? So we're talking about solo acting serious and solo acting humorous. Not much has changed since you were around, Allie. So what's your definition of these two categories?
10 minutes of a piece that has to come from a script, cut down to that 10 minutes. Make sure you find a really good arc in that 10 minutes. Yeah, It's been a hot second.
So it's one.
As far as I know, those are some of the big points in order to qualify under DI or HI.
And it's one person, no costuming. But you do have to, with your body, create a setting and character or characters, and be able to tell a story. And that's really, that's what acting is, no matter what the context. In the forensics context, it just means really no props, no scenery, no costumes. You just have to create all of that with yourself. And then supposedly Solo Serious is dramatic and Solo Humorous is funny. But oftentimes I find that a humorous element in Solo Serious can be useful, because the best writers in drama use humor to break up the mood. It's even at 10 minutes, sometimes you need a little zinger here or there. You need to have a moment of levity in the midst of a lot of darkness and sadness. And then on the Solo Humorous side, it's often just not funny, but that's my opinion. And I am in the minority for most of that. Malyssa, anything you would add?
I do like on the WFCA website when they are defining both solo acting humorous and solo acting serious. Also, before we get too deep in, In the WFCA, we call it solo acting, humorous, and serious. On the national level at NSDA, it is dramatic interpretation and humorous interpretation, or DI and HI. And at NCFL, it is called dramatic performance, or DP. So if you hear us using them interchangeably, DI and solo acting serious are the same thing, and HI and solo acting humorous or solo hum are the same thing. Just so we're not confusing for people who are non-Wisconsinites, because all of our stuff is confusing. But in the definitions on the WFCA website, it points out that it is a student, by using self as a medium between the selection and the audience, the student shall use vocal and physical skills to develop a complete performance. And I really like that phrasing. So whoever came up with that phrase in the WFCA, maybe you're listening, kudos to you. I really like that.
Wow. I should have just had you answer the question for me, because that's so much more concise.
I know. She's all about the definitions this series. She's like, I have it up in front of me.
The website, okay? I got the tab open. Oh, hey, Tula.
Oh, everyone. This is my dog barking in the background. She's normally quiet, but she just wanted to let the sass out a little bit.
Yeah. If your dog did a forensics category, what category would she do?
It would either be HI, because she bounces off the wall, or group discussion, because she is the most extroverted being that I've ever known. She just wants to be around other people and talk to other people all the time.
Kurt, would you like HI more as a category if there were dogs?
No. Why would that make it better?
I don't know.
Why would it not? Could you imagine having a dog in a DI round?
Yes. Oh my God. Just
After
like a big Saint Bernard
of just being brought down with so much intensity, just for there to be a dog. Maybe there just needs to be a dog present in every room.
Yes. These ideas are great. I'm bringing them up at the spring meeting. Y'all get ready.
I'm ready. Let's go.
Okay. Let's talk about what it takes to be successful in these categories. And let's start with solo serious, since we have Allie here. Allie, you found a lot of success in solo serious, also called DI. What did you work on when you were a student? Like, what was your focus when you were trying to be successful, and how did you work towards gaining that success?
I think the biggest thing I had to work towards is internalizing each character and finding value in each characters that I performed story. When I first started in forensics, I think I was focused so much more on presentation and looking good to judges that I really relied on that. And Solo Serious kind of flipped me on its head and said, nah, girl, you have to make this a moment. You have to invest yourself into this piece to make others want to be invested rather than just look good. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
They're nodding.
It's hard to know who should be the person to respond vocally.
Well, maybe if this helps, I wrote a lot of notes and I legit wrote this down. Where did it go? Somewhere. This was the night before, I think my senior year of NSDA Nationals. I was in solo hum and I was rehearsing my piece and I was like really stuck in a rut. And I remember rehearsing in the hotel room with both of you. There was at one point, Kurt, you were like pushing me so hard. And at the end, you're like, I think the character's name was Zelda. You're like, I found her for the first time. Because I was just kind of letting go of a lot of the technique-y things, a lot of like specific blocking, just a lot stylistic things you were looking for, and just focusing so much more on, like what my character wanted, what she needed, and letting that drive all the way through. I probably cried a little bit.
You did.
I'm glad you remember.
I have no memory of this, but I sound like an a-hole.
No, here's the thing. And why I remember. Yeah, I remember this practice because I enjoy coaching solo acting, but I feel like solo acting, serious specifically, is the most easily translatable to actual traditional acting for lots of people. And I have no experience in theater on stage. I'm all about wearing the all black, being backstage, giving me a mic pack, give me a paintbrush. I'm your girl. But when it comes to actual acting, I don't understand technique or anything like that. Whereas the two of you have both experience in that, especially now, Allie, but Kirt also has done lots of theater and has actually studied technique and worked with directors. And so that was a moment where I saw that I had reached my limit with you as a coach. And then Kirt got to come in and see, okay, well, here's the line you've gotten her to. I'm going to push her 3 steps forward. Which was good for me because I do reach a limit as a coach. I can cut a DI like no other, but I can't necessarily pull out accents and help with the idea of the exercises one goes to find those characters and sorts of things. I reach a limit being a non-actor. Personally. Well,
to your credit, you did find some banger DI pieces, and you still continue to find banger DI pieces.
Yeah, that piece took me so long to cut, though. That piece took Allie and I literally 2.5 weeks to cut down to 10 minutes. It is, because sometimes when you're cutting a piece, it's just a certain selection, a few pages that are all right next to each other or a monologue. But that selection was truly from the entirety of that play. When we had to turn that piece into the NSDA before we went to nationals, Allie had to keep performing it for me, and I had to go back and highlight it, and trying to go back and forth was a hot mess. But at the same time, that's what makes it good, and that's what makes it easier to put to the real world, is that it's actual acting that's happening.
Yeah, I would say in Solo Serious, those exercises, which are really all just related to character development, they're very important. So I think you guys are talking about 2 different elements of success, which is, the first one is finding a decent piece and cutting it so that it makes sense. And we've talked about that in other categories. We will talk about that in future categories, but finding that piece that makes sense and fits into 10 minutes and tells a full story is important here. There's an added element, though, that I think is really important in solo acting that is maybe more important than in other categories, which is being able as an actor to find your way into the material. And so that doesn't necessarily mean that the character on the page is like you. It doesn't mean you have to find, a girl from the Midwest who is your same, height and skin color or stuff like that. But some part of the story, whether the person has anything to do with you, as a how someone would describe you, some element of their experience, you need to be able to understand. In order to access what you were talking about, Allie, which, again, I don't remember that specific experience with great detail, but I do remember having that moment with a lot of young actors, yourself included, that moment of just a breakthrough where it's oh, you're not Allie in front of me anymore. Something just switched up. A little piece of Allie was the spark to create Zelda. And I remember that piece, and I remember it being very good. So I wish I could remember more of that specific experience, but I think that just means I've had a wealth of great coaching experiences with lots of different kids, some from my team and unfortunately some from other teams. I love what Malyssa said about sometimes needing to know when it's time to pass the kid on to somebody else. Because I've had that experience too, where it's I think I've given you what I can, and somebody else's eyes need to be on you, and you need to start working with another set of opinions, because I've taken you as far as I can take you. And that isn't related just to Solo Serious, but I think it's a really great coaching lesson for people to take with them.
Yes. I mean, I'm going to have to retell you that story and make you remember, because it was memorable, Kirt. But
okay, good.
I'm going to pretend that you remember it for the sake of right now.
I do. I mean, again, I remember the piece, and you have fond place in my heart, because I remember you being a great young actress and wanting to encourage you to give it a shot. because I thought there was something about your talent and ability that deserved to have the chance to go see if it could be your job. And look at you now.
Surprise.
You're doing it. So, yeah. So that's important. It's a big part of coaching, is making sure that you tell kids when you think they can be successful in something. And don't keep that to yourself.
Yeah, no, give it away. Give it away now. So as as we continue just talking about how successful and great you are, do you have tips for students who are in solo acting to help make their practice sessions feel like ways to make their practice sessions feel worthwhile, and like tips to help push them forward? Because we're starting to get into the beginning of the season. Now we're transitioning to the middle and keeping things fresh and interesting.
Oh gosh. Like you said, Kirt, before, here, Tula, have this chewy. Kirt, like you said before, get your piece in front of multiple eyes. Just getting different perspectives can really help shape a piece. Be ready to let certain parts go. There could be parts of your piece that you love, but if they're not helpful in telling the story, if they're just even adding too much time, you have to let it go for the sake of the whole piece. What's another thing? Also, if you're looking for like a piece in general, don't be afraid to find a piece that doesn't, I guess as I like to call it, hit like a check mark or like hits a certain point. You know, things that have like talk about disease, death, violence, sexuality. You don't necessarily have to find a piece like that to pull heartstrings and get people invested in a piece. Find something that you connect with and you think is worthwhile sharing with others.
I like that notion. Find something worthwhile. That's good. I know one thing that I do like to do with kids as they're practicing is to just kind of sit down and ask questions as though they were that character, and get them to examine a little bit more of like the background of the person, or like what their day was like. And so often in solo serious acting specifically, because in Humorous is such a different animal at this point. But the notion of like, what is the setting? When so many solo serious pieces are just monologues where they're talking to an audience, it's like, you still have to give me some sense of like, what time does this person exist in? Like, where in the world are they? Why are they telling this story? You know, it's like, what would compel them to share all of this deeply personal information or this really tragic story? Like, who are they talking to? And if there's no sense of that, if the actor hasn't thought of it at all, you can really tell as an audience that examination hasn't happened.
Yeah. And I guess with that, whatever piece it is, you better hope you like it, because you're going to have to really dive into that piece so much deeper than you think you're going to have to in order to find that depth.
And it's a really unique experience, solo serious acting in forensics for a young actor, because there's really not any other area of acting where you spend this much time focusing on this much material. Like, you spend your whole year working on 10 minutes of acting and constantly improving it and getting feedback and changing and keeping it fresh. I mean, other than being one of like the very few fortunate people who get to perform on Broadway when they're that young and get to like do a role for a year. Like, most teenagers don't get that experience of like, I'm going to focus on this for 8 months and make it the best it can possibly be by the time I'm done with it. So it's an acting exercise for sure, just to do the category. So,
oh my gosh. Yeah. Why don't we talk about HI? Even though I never did it, I admired every single person who ever did, because it terrified me.
Agreed. And this is where I'm going to roll it on.
To get you to do it.
I think I dealt with like too much self-doubt. I was like, no, I can't do pops. I just want to make people cry.
Yeah, we had a conversation, I think it was before your junior year, where we were like, do we want to try HI? It could be really fun. And you were like, or it could be really awful. Let's not. And I was like, let's not. I think we did like a mildly humorous poetry that year instead.
I think we did.
Yeah, and also we got your humor out more when we did your duos with Mackenzie. Is where we played more into your humor when you would have someone else there to fail comedically with you if it happened, rather than having to stand on it by yourself. And I think that's one of the things that is really scary about HI is that it's hard to make it actually traditionally humorous. Like, it's not always full of like LOL, LMAO moments. A lot of the times it's just interesting rather than traditionally funny. So it can be really scary to ask kids to do it because you have to stand up there all by yourself and it's a different kind of vulnerability from solo serious or DI because it's a different part of yourself that you're putting out there. And also I think that the physicality of HI is what scares people away. 100%.
Oh, 100%. Also on that fun story, a DI that I did my freshman year of college at Ripon College, I actually quarterfinaled with it at nationals, but then turns out like it was either last year or the year before, some girl at NSDA high school nationals did that same piece as an HI, and I think she got like 4th. I don't even remember the title of the piece, so I am so sorry, everyone listening. But that just goes to show you how much finding a good piece can go into doing a successful DI or HI, and especially HI doesn't have to be traditionally funny. You can make it funny.
Yeah.
It can be dramatic with funny bits, and it still worked. And I sat there, my little sister texted me about it, and I said, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Here we are.
I have some thoughts about that because I remember that very clearly. I also remember that you came and you performed your version of that piece for us at Forensics After Dark, and it was very, very good. And I enjoyed your performance of the piece immensely. And I saw that, and I do not want to disparage the young woman, and I don't. Like, she was a very talented young person, and I wish her coaches had led her down a different path, because the story that piece told was about a mother coming to grips with her gay son. Well, actually, it was like her gay children. It was like multiple children all came out to her, right? That's the one we're talking about?
Like, one was gay, one's transgendered, like literally every tick mark in the LGBTQIA, every single one.
And as a gay person, I found her humorous interpretation of that piece deeply offensive because it dealt in nothing but unfortunate stereotypes that I sat in a room and watched hundreds of people laugh at these offensive stereotypes of LGBTQ people. And I didn't love it. I didn't think it was great. And I was really unhappy that a piece like that in that context had made it to finals at CFL and then found out she made it to finals at NSDA as well. Not because the girl wasn't talented and not because she didn't deserve success. Again, I do not disparage her, but context is really key. Yes, that piece was humorous. The mother's reactions to her kids coming out in all of these different ways was meant to be funny. But if you take out the human element, if you take out the genuine despair of the mother feeling those things and then accepting the kids anyways at the end, when you take that out, to me, it just became like the heart was gone, and then it was offensive, and then it was hard to like. And then it was like later that I got to see you do your version of it, and I was like, oh, this is what it's meant to be. Because in that category, you were allowed to be both serious and funny. So all the punchlines landed. It was still funny, but there was heart. There was heart with humor versus stripping out the emotional context to just make it silly and fun. And again, relying on those stereotypes that I really strongly disliked. And I will say for the third time, I don't mean to disparage that very talented young actress. I just didn't like how that piece was used in that context. What a fascinating example. Thank you for bringing that up.
This is my level of humor, and I like how we just went straight into it to taboo for the tab room moment.
So true. Allison Macknick, proving she listens to the podcast.
Hey.
I'm just here to win all the
Malyssa, I need you, because again, I'm not a solo hum aficionado. I never did it and haven't really coached a lot of successful solo hums at all either. So when you're choosing the piece, what do you look for when you're trying to find a solo hum piece?
I am looking for a piece where humor can be found outside of the text. A lot of people do HIs where all of the humor is in the script, and that's not what makes a good HI or a solo humorous. A good solo humorous is a piece where there are parts of it that are funny that the author already gave you, but there are places where you get to expand. My words are gone. Where you get to take on and bring more into it than the author has provided. It's the interp aspect of it when it's humorous interpretation. So you want to find a piece where get that voice, where you know that you have moments that you and the student performer can add on to it, where what they are doing is funny without even necessarily having to say something. And it's funny without having to be offensive about it. Because sometimes people do things where the script is really plain, but they choose to do an offensive accent or a mildly offensive interpretation because they think that that's what's humorous. And that's not humorous at all. Also, you don't want there to be too many character changes in it because I think people take on too many characters in solo hum, and then it can be really messy and hard to follow. And then the physicality ends up being really distracting away from the actual content of the piece.
So true. And that's one of the things I struggle with. That's one of the things I struggle with solo hum is sometimes I'm so distracted by all of the changing characters that I don't have time to like any of the changing characters.
That's
and I
fair.
think that's important too. Like you have to like some of these people to then be able to feel comfortable laughing at or with them, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that fair?
And I do think as it is in DI, where a lot of great solo acting series has moments of lightness, that there should be moments, not necessarily of darkness, but moments of like heart. Like people have made fun of me before, and Allie knows this is true. I love an HI that ends with an aww at the end. That's my favorite kind of HI, where you've laughed and laughed and laughed, and then it ends with like a nice heartwarming moment. So that's my kind of HI. Because I feel like it provides balance.
Yeah, I would rather watch something funny that gives me different levels and ends on a good note rather than I'm just here to pull out as many funny gags as I possibly can. Please like me. Yeah, and I feel like that's the big trap that a lot of HI students fall into.
It's like when you're watching a lip sync on RuPaul's Drag Race. There should be at least a little bit of something, but if there are too many wig reveals and too many outfit changes, it's distracting away from the art form of the moment, you know?
A very cogent simile. Thank you.
If you're going to do a good pop, just make sure that wig is glued down.
Glue it!
Please.
But on the notes of popping, this is a question that I get asked all the time. And actually, shout out to John Balsaric from Wauwatosa East, who emailed me a few weeks ago being like, how do you actually like coach the physicality of HI? You should break it down. You want your head / shoulders / neck to be doing something. You want to change something from the waist or the hips, something from the knees, and or something from the feet. And if you choose different positions for each of those levels, that's how you can determine different characters. So you can have a shoulder hunched and a hip pushed forward and knees splayed out over toes, sort of like second position in ballet, or you can have a foot out to the side with a hip popped to the other side. And once you break down the different levels that the body can be, snapping and popping is so much less scary than just trying to like go in and just move your body around and hope for the best. But if you break down the individual sections and levels of the body, it's so not that scary, y'all. It's not. I promise.
Yeah.
It's not. And if you do it enough, you get to develop muscle memory.
100%.
I think I did this a little in high school, but my coaches in college focused a lot on this. We would literally just be in the middle of we're practicing some other piece or doing something else. And they would literally just shout to us a character that we're supposed to pop into, and immediately just drop the hat and just do it. And then they'll shout another one and just do that. Once you focus on just getting the muscle memory of those pops, I say as someone who's never done HI before, it becomes so much more easier, and it gives you, once you get that muscle memory, it gives you much more freedom to add on and to play with it.
But to be fair, even though you have not done HI, you did pop in and out of characters when we did duo. And I do make, especially in duo, it's important to me that both people in the piece know all of the lines and each other's characters and positions and stuff. And that would be a game that we would play where we would just like catch up about our day and gossip, but we would do it in characters from each other's pieces. Because I don't like being bored very much.
That's awesome advice. Yeah.
Or make that the title of your memoir. I don't like being bored very much.
Oh, I've got so many other good memoir titles with a lot more cusses in it. Don't you worry, girl.
She's got a lot of memoirs.
I'm so sorry I submitted that one.
But I'll add that to the list just for you. Okay, so let's talk about the things that people like assume about DI and HI, or like believe that DI and HI need, that we 100% don't agree with and need to call out. I don't think that DI is always 100% supposed to make you cry. I don't. I think it's great when it does, but I have seen really nuanced, sort of quiet DIs that have just been just deeply engaging, but not necessarily like sob worthy.
Yeah.
Fair. Yeah.
Kind of like I said before, you don't have to have a piece that hits a certain check mark. It doesn't have to talk about cancer, race, whatever. Legitimately one of the best pieces I ever saw, and I wish I knew the name. It was about this, it was a weird little story about this bird girl who wanted to have wings. And the entire last 5 minutes is this bird girl getting her wings, and the amount of joy on this particular performer's face, just physicalizing her getting wings. As weird as it sounds, blown away. Didn't have any of those track marks. It wasn't anything conventionally sad or dramatic, but it was just done so well. So kind of like, you don't have to find something that necessarily makes you cry, but you have to find something that's compelling and something that you're going to be invested in.
Ooh, I think compelling is the word we've been trying to hit for a while now. We have not hit, but yes, great DI is always compelling. You did it. She brought the air horn noise.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like earlier in the conversation, Malyssa, you dispelled one of the myths about solo hum, which is that there have to be 20 characters.
Yes.
Like a solo hum with 3 or 4. I do think it's one of the hallmarks of solo hum that you are going to display a few characters, like that popping, that quick switch from character to character. I do think is a hallmark of solo hum. And if you want to be really successful in it at the highest levels, you need to do that. But it doesn't need to be 20 people. Mm-hmm. I've seen really great solo hums that are 4, 5 characters, and they're all done really effectively and cleanly, and they're great. They're fun, and then you actually get to know who each of these characters are, and you can tell them apart by the 3rd or 4th minute of the piece, and then you're just enjoying it the rest of the way. If you're constantly introducing new people throughout, you never really catch up, and that's when like I find myself sometimes appreciating solo hums the 2nd or 3rd time I've seen them, whereas I just don't even understand them the first time around if they're overly complicated. So I would say that's something about like solo hum that I appreciate that you said, so then I didn't really have to say it, but I did want to reiterate it.
Ooh, another myth I just thought of. Your piece doesn't have to have like a special talent, for lack of better words. You don't have to sing beautifully for it to be great. You don't have to do like this one really cool dance move. You don't have to like, I mean, if you got it in your back pocket, like great, pull it out. But your piece doesn't need it for it to be enjoyable and incredible and worth watching.
Amen.
Yeah.
All right. We've talked about it a little bit, but let's talk about HIs and DIs / solo acting series / humorous that we've seen that were incredible. One that we talk about a lot with our kids is a DI from national finals. I want to say like 2000, like 9 or something, like way far back. I don't even know how far back this was, but it's called The Heroin Diaries, and it's about a rock star dealing with addiction. And it is just, a lot of it is the physicality of him actually injecting heroin into his arms. Not actually, but like the action of doing it. And the entire national finals audience sat in perfect silence every time he did this. So all you could hear was his breathing, and you could like feel the tension in his body. And like, it wasn't like him dying from the overdose or anything. Like, the drama was in the journey of his addiction. And I just was so in it the whole time that I had stopped breathing. And it's one of those things where you go to clap and you realize that you had been forgetting to breathe. So you're like trying to get your breath caught up. And it was just so good. It was just so good. And I've looked up now, and it's from 2012. DI Finals, NSDA 2012.
Okay, so I'm gonna go against type and talk about a solo hum performance that I really
Kirt!
No, shocking. And you probably already know which one I'm going to talk about, Melissa, because I brought it up so many times in like the 10 years since we saw it. But the solo hum at NSDA Nats in Birmingham of Dora the Explorer, I think is so effing funny. And I don't think most things are really funny. And here's what was so smart about that, which is that it's a humorous piece about characters that, even though I don't have kids and I've never watched an entire episode of Dora the Explorer, I knew enough about it because it was such a part of the zeitgeist at that point in time that like I had easy access to why that interpretation was funny, because I knew enough about the show to understand like, okay, Dora is a kid with a magical backpack and magical tools, and they go on silly adventures. And then she was able to morph all of those people with a really simple concept. She just reimagined it as though Dora was grown up instead of being a kid. Yep. And like, you change the context of Dora. You change the context of Dora being a kid to Dora being an adult and having to deal with all these nutty animals and crazy things popping out of her backpack, and like gradually getting frustrated about this crazy world she has to inhabit as a grown-up. Hilarious. So well done. So clean. We got to see her performing against Mackenzie in one of like, I want to say the quarterfinal. So was it quarterfinal that she was in with her? Okay. Yep. And so like we got to see it up close, and then we got to see it on the big stage, and it was great both ways. So it was just all around like one of the best, if not the best, solo hum performance I've ever seen. And I recommend it to people to watch all the time. Like people who don't know what forensics is, I'm like, start with this, because most people will get it. Even if they don't get forensics, they'll immediately understand what's going on because of the easy in of understanding what Dora the Explorer is. So I think it's called like 10 Best Adventures or something like that, because that was what the script was actually titled. But it's available on YouTube, and I highly recommend you go watch it because I think it's very funny.
It took me about half of Kirt's description of it for me to remember what it was, but legitimately it's so hilarious, and it really matches Melissa's advice about you don't have to find a piece that has like all the funny bits already laid out for you. She added so much on her own.
You laugh at a girl blinking. Like the way that she blinked in the performance was so funny. Like that's the part that I remember is her just standing there and blinking. So funny.
Yeah.
Makes me so mad.
I agree.
It was so good.
So Allie, what's a performance you remember?
Of HI?
Or DI.
Or DI. Oh my gosh. There was one, a couple years ago, it was like my freshman year of college when I interned for the NSTA, and they had me actually film semifinals for HI. And I think she only got she got like 4th or 3rd place. And I don't remember the particular student's name, but she did an HI of She Kills Monsters, which was really just personally, it was transformational because I'd never heard of that play before. I did end up doing it later in college. But just that piece I thought was so well cut after I did it and realized, oh my gosh, the amount of work that went into breaking such a nuanced piece down to 10 minutes is a credit to her and her coaches. And I just thought it was really cool to see a piece like that wasn't so wasn't a traditional HI in that it didn't have a lot of those particular funny gags, and it had a lot of heart in it, which was really nice to see in a HI.
Because we like an awe moment.
Also, just got really excited because I taped her in semifinals, and then I saw her go to finals, and I was like, "Blah!" And I went up to my boss. I'm like, "Can I please go watch finals for this girl?"
I think you came and sat with us, didn't you?
I think I did.
Yeah.
I think I did. I did.
That is the hallmark of a really great piece. I just saw it, but now I want to go watch it again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. Well, I want to just thank you so much for giving of your time and joining us today, Allie. It's been such a pleasure having you with us.
Do you have any upcoming Chicago performances that you want to plug on our podcast, just in case anyone wants to come down and see you in the theater?
Well, if I do, I will let you know. Right now, we are in the thick of audition season, which is basically January through March. Things are booking for summer stock, Christmas shows, new TV shows, new films. So the fact that I have a Sunday free is quite nice. And I'm glad I did, so I can talk with y'all.
Yay!
Right now, it's hitting pavement. Kiddos out there, if you are interested in becoming a professional actor, if you're part of your theater program, even if you're not on a forensics team, just give DI or HI a try. It will help your acting so immensely. There's a lot of skills that I learned from that I still hark on now, doing this professionally.
You heard it here first, folks.
Great advice. I love that. Well, thank you again for joining us, and do let us know what you're up to so that we can let all of our listeners know what you're up to and they can see the great work that you're doing.
Yes, yes, yes.
So
thank you, Allie.
Of course, you guys.
Talk to you again soon.
Bye, y'all.
Forensics Faces is proudly produced in Wisconsin, the birthplace of the National Forensics League. Our theme song was written and performed by JJ Hameister.
If you're a fan of Forensics Faces, the best way to support the podcast is to leave a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. You can get in touch with Malyssa and me by emailing listen@forensicsfaces.com.
You can also find links to all our social media accounts and our online merch store by visiting forensicsfaces.com.
I'm Kirt.
And I'm Malyssa, encouraging you to listen,
think,
and speak.
Preferably in that order.